Okay, let's paint a picture. It's Sunday, April 27th, 2025. Out on the Arabian Sea, you've got Indian warships. And then, whoosh, these streaks of fire, BrahMos missiles launching. Anti-ship, anti-surface. The Navy actually shared the footage. Quite a spectacle.
A real display of naval power, yeah.
But then, rewind just 5 days, April 22nd. Think about Pahalgam, Kashmir, those beautiful, serene valleys.
Vizoran Meadows,
Yeah.
specifically.
Right, and that peace just shattered by, well, a horrific terror attack. 26 people killed, 25 Indians, one Nepali citizen.
Such a stark contrast, isn't it, from that awful violence in the mountains to this very visible show of force at sea.
Exactly, and that's what we want to unpack today. What's the connection? What is this rapid sequence, the tragedy, the naval display, the pretty strong diplomatic moves that followed? What does it all signal for India, for the region?
It really feels less like a series of separate events and more like, well, interconnected pieces. The speed of it all, the public nature of the naval exercises right after Pahalgam, it seems deliberate.
Like a message.
A very clear message, I think, projecting strength, resolve, perhaps, after a really painful blow.
Okay, let's dig into that naval exercise first. Sunday, April 27th. The ships involved: Kolkata-class destroyers, Nilgiri-class, Krivat-class frigates. These are serious platforms.
Absolutely. Not just coastal patrol boats. We're talking significant offensive capability.
And the BrahMos missile itself. Joint India-Russia project, right? Known for speed, accuracy.
And that sea skimming ability. Flies really low, making it tough to detect and intercept. Range up to, but nearly 300 kilometers?
Yeah. But the timing, you mentioned it, seemed deliberate. And it turns out this was the same day Pakistan announced its own missile test plans in the Arabian Sea. They even issued warnings.
Right. That detail is crucial. It adds this whole other layer, doesn't it? Almost like an anything you can do situation playing out.
A direct response, perhaps? Or just seizing the moment?
Hard to say definitively, but Pakistan's announcement, with the no-fly zone and warnings, it definitely amplified the significance of India's exercises, made them much more of a public statement.
The Navy's official line was about revalidating and demonstrating readiness for long-range precision strikes.
And they added that phrase, anytime, anywhere, anyhow, about protecting maritime interests. It's strong language. Taking a routine drill, maybe, and using the context, the timing, to send a much louder signal. Combat readiness.
Okay, so that's the display of power. Now let's pivot back to the trigger, perhaps. The Pahalgam attack. Just devastating.
It really was. Pahalgam, it's such a symbol of Kashmir's beauty, tourism.
And the victims, honeymooners, families on holiday, people from West Bengal, UP, Maharashtra, just ordinary people.
Turned into targets. And those reports, the terrorists apparently asking for names, religions, it speaks volumes about the divisive, cruel intent behind it.
Horrifying. It wasn't just random violence. It felt targeted to sow fear and division.
Exactly. Attacking a tourist spot like Vizoran Meadows aims to disrupt that sense of peace, that normalcy people were starting to feel again. Undermine the progress.
You hear about survivors like Debashish Bhattacharjee or the Navy officer Vinny Narwal, newly married. It just brings home the human tragedy behind the numbers.
It really does. These aren't just statistics. They're shattered lives, families devastated. It personalizes the impact of such violence.
And the government's response was swift, pointing fingers directly at Pakistan, linking it to the resistance front, the TRF.
Which India considers an offshoot of Pakistan-based groups, yeah.
The Cabinet Committee on Security, the CCS, met right away. Their take was that this was, quote, a desperate attempt to derail Kashmir's progress.
That framing is important. They pointed to successful elections, booming tourism, economic growth, saying this attack was meant to stop all that.
Setting the stage, essentially, for what came next, diplomatically.
Precisely. By framing it as an attack on Kashmir's progress, linked to external actors via TRF, it justifies, in their view, a much firmer response. The timing, hitting when things seem to be improving, feeds that narrative.
Okay, let's talk about that response. It was multi-pronged. First, the Indus Waters Treaty, signed way back in 1960.
A cornerstone of India-Pakistan relations, governing water sharing from the Indus and its tributaries for decades.
And India put it in abeyance, basically suspended it, conditioned for bringing it back. Pakistan stopped supporting terrorism.
That's a massive move, huge symbolic weight, and potentially, very serious practical consequences down the line.
The Jal Shakti minister, C.R. Patil, even made that strong statement. Something like, not a drop of Indus water will flow to Pakistan. Rhetoric, maybe, but Powerful.
Very powerful rhetoric. While you can't just turn off a river instantly, linking water, a vital resource, directly to terrorism is a major escalation. It puts immense pressure on Pakistan. Given their reliance on that water for agriculture, for power, it changes the calculus.
Then the Attari-Wagah border crossing shut down.
Immediately, Pakistani nationals given, 48 hours or so to leave India.
Yeah, leading to those difficult scenes at the border, families rushing farewells, very tough human impact there.
Definitely. And it wasn't just the border. Diplomats expelled defense, naval, air advisors from Pakistan declared persona non grata.
India recalled its own advisors, too. Staff sizes at the high commissions were reduced on both sides. It felt like slamming the brakes on diplomatic ties.
It's a significant downgrading, absolutely. Closing borders, expelling key personnel. It really limits formal engagement.
Right.
Then add the visa crackdown.
Right. Canceling the SARC visa exemption scheme for Pakistanis, canceling all existing visas, that 48-hour departure requirement again.
It isolates Pakistan further, makes movement much harder. It's a comprehensive diplomatic squeeze, really.
But Pakistan didn't just take it, did they? They retaliated.
Oh, yeah. Strong reaction. Suspending bilateral agreements, closing their airspace to Indian flights, shutting down trade completely.
And Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif's comments, calling the IWT suspension an act of war. That's incredibly strong language.
Extremely strong.
Yeah.
And reports of firing across the line of control around the same time. It shows how quickly things escalated.
It became a tit-for-tat across diplomatic, economic, and even military domains.
A classic escalation spiral, unfortunately. Raises serious concerns about regional stability when things move that fast.
Amidst all this, Prime Minister Modi addressed the nation on his Mann Ki Baat radio program, called the Pahalgam attack cowardly, promised justice, accountability for perpetrators and their supporters.
Reinforcing that narrative, we discussed Kashmir's progress being targeted, condemning those trying to disrupt it. Standard messaging, but important in a crisis.
He also highlighted international support, which seemed quite significant. Statements from the U.S. president at the time, Donald Trump, Iran's President Pezeshkian, FBI Director Kash Patel, condemning the attack.
That international condemnation is key for India's position. It helps isolate Pakistan, if they are indeed seen as linked, and bolsters India's stance that it's responding to an unacceptable act of terror.
And domestically, you saw the reaction too, right? Protests, outrage on social media, hashtag Pahalgam attack, hashtag India stand strong.
The very unified national response, yeah. Grief, anger, and a demand for strong action from the government.
So bringing it back to that question, why now? It really does seem tied to the post-Article 370 situation in Kashmir, doesn't it? An attempt to reverse the narrative of returning stability.
That seems to be the most logical interpretation looking at the context. If things were calming down, tourism picking up, that undermines the narrative of those who thrive on conflict. So an attack like Pahalgam, it's a way to reignite tensions, grab headlines, challenge the government's claims.
And the alleged Pakistan link via TRF, even with that confusing retraction of their initial claim.
Yeah, the BJP pointed that out, didn't they? The retraction itself looks suspicious to them. And statements from Pakistani leadership around that time, perhaps General Munir, it all adds to the complexity. But India clearly saw a Pakistani hand, directly or indirectly.
Which makes the missile tests in the Arabian Sea look even more like a direct warning, especially with Pakistan planning its own tests.
Exactly. It's not just routine readiness. It's strategic signaling, saying we have the capability and we're ready to use it if necessary, especially when you look at the advanced ships involved, like INS Surat.
Right, equipped with BrahMos, Barak 8 missiles, AI integration, stealth features. It highlights India's focus on building up that maritime deterrence.
A key part of the overall strategic posture, particularly in that region.
So looking ahead now, where does this leave things? Tensions are obviously sky high.
Definitely. The IWT suspension is a major point of friction, with potentially huge long-term consequences for Pakistan's water security and economy.
The situation at the La Sea, while maybe managed for now, remains a flashpoint. Any miscalculation could be dangerous.
Absolutely. Meanwhile, India seems determined to project strength at sea, maintain that deterrence. And domestically, the NIA investigation in Kashmir continues, trying to dismantle the networks behind the attack.
It feels like the Pahalgam attack, as horrific as it was, has become this focal point, this catalyst for a much harder line from India.
It serves as a painful reminder of the cost of this conflict, the fragility of peace efforts. And it raises those difficult questions for people in India, about security, about the path forward in Kashmir, about the relationship with Pakistan.
So wrapping this deep dive up, It seems clear these events, the attack, the naval maneuvers, the diplomatic rupture, they aren't isolated incidents. They're deeply interconnected.
Yeah, they paint a picture of a significant shift, perhaps, a
Yeah.
more assertive, maybe more comprehensive Indian approach to dealing with cross-border terrorism and regional security challenges. A willingness to use multiple levers, military signaling, diplomatic pressure, economic tools like the IWT.
It signals a change, definitely. Which leaves us and you listening with that big question. What are the long-term ripple effects for India, for Pakistan, for the whole region? Given these firm actions, the deep complexities, where does this path lead?
And what role, realistically, can international diplomacy play now? Can it help de-escalate, or are we in a fundamentally new, more tense phase?
A lot to think about. The human cost is always there underlying these strategic moves. Definitely something worth keeping a close eye on.